In the last video, we talked about the overpass. That's when the superior side has a pawn on the 4th rank, and the superior side needs to reach the 6th rank. And so in order to get to one of the 3 critical squares in the 6th rank, in our case it would be d6, e6, or f6. In this case, white is the superior side, and so white will need to pass over the pawn, meaning in front of the pawn, in a diagonal line to get to the outside critical square, which is the f6. Outside meaning away from the black king. So that's what we saw in the previous video. And in video 61, we talked about the critical squares. And just to recap, the critical square for a pawn situated on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th rank is located on the 6th rank. I'm sorry, for the 4th, if the pawn is on the 4th rank, then the critical square would be on the 6th rank. If it's on the 2nd and the 3rd, then it would be on the it would always be 2 ranks in front of the pawn. So for the 2nd it would be the 4th, and for the 3rd it would be the 5th. For the 4th it's the 6th. So it has to be always 2 ranks in front of the pawn, and it's one of those 3 squares, either the one directly in front of the pawn or on its side, either right or left. So those are the 3 critical squares. So in our case it's d6, e6, f6. So the first thing you need to do if you're white, you need to focus not on trying to confront the black. You're not going to war against black. You're going to war. The prize here is, what you need to do, the goal in your mind is to try to control the critical square, not to try to stop black or to try to confront black. So you don't go directly ahead of you to a head-on confrontation. Rather, you go in a diagonal fashion. You go toward the outside critical square, the f6 square. If you can get there before black does, then you win the game. If you cannot get to one of those 3 squares before black stops you, then it's a draw. So let's see what the correct play is. So clearly, if it's white's turn to act right now, then white should go toward the f6 square and move towards it diagonally. So the correct move here is c3, and then black, no matter what black tries to do, black cannot stop white from getting to the f6 square. So, as you can see, white gets to the f6 square safely, and now black cannot win, because at this point it's just a matter of technique. Once white controls a critical square, then white can simply either do a turning maneuver to get black out of the queening square, or black can just push the pawn and eventually use that as leverage, as a tempo in order to gain the opposition. Either way, it's going to be a win for white, because black will not be able to remain on the queening square for long. So in this case, white uses its opposition to get black off the queening square, and now white controls the critical square needed in order to promote the pawn safely. And so now it's game over. Okay, let's go back and see how white can actually screw up this position and play it incorrectly and lose and draw the game in a situation where they should be winning. So let's see if white goes to b3. Okay, so this player is basically, I guess they're thinking, hey, let me go toward black and try to fight black. I'm gonna fight him. So they're going directly toward black and trying to stop black from coming close to the pawn this way. So that's I guess what the reasoning behind this play is, but it doesn't work because what black needs to do at this point is black doesn't even need to go toward the pawn. What black needs to do is stop white from getting to a critical square. If black can stop white, can prevent white from getting to a critical square, d6, e6, or f6, then black will push, because eventually this pawn needs to make it to the e8 square in order to queen. And so at that point, black will either capture it, or black will position itself on the e8 square in such a manner that white will not be able to kick it out from the e8 square, because it won't have anywhere to move without capturing the pawn, as we've seen in previous videos. If white is on the e6 square when it's black's turn to act, and the pawn is on the e7 square, then it's a draw because black has nowhere to go. So again, so black doesn't. This is not an urgent matter for black. Black can actually take it easy, and I mean the obvious play at this point for black is to go to b7. This is consistent with the concepts that we've already covered up until this point, which is that black should try to get the opposition against white, and at this point black has the opposition against white, and so black will draw, because if white tries to move closer, I mean the most obvious move for white here would be c4, then black reacts accordingly and moves one square closer, and black maintains the opposition, and at this point it's an easy draw for black because white cannot control, and not even the rank in front of the pawn, let alone 2 ranks in front of the pawn. So this is an easy draw for black. But let's say in this case, let's say white moves to c3. So once again, the obvious move for black would be to move to c7 in order to maintain the opposition. But let's see what would happen if black moves to c6. And now black no longer has the opposition. So here's the question that I'm posing to you. Do you think that black just screwed himself up? Do you think that black has just turned a drawn game into a losing game because black is losing the opposition and white will now be able to gain ground on it? And the answer is no. Black still has a drawn game. Why? Because once again, opposition is not something that black needs in order to draw this game. White needs to have opposition in order to be able to occupy a critical square and win the game. Black doesn't need opposition doesn't always need opposition in order to prevent white from occupying a critical square and winning. And in this case, as we can see, white cannot get to a critical square no matter what white does, even if white has the opposition. Look at this. White actually has the opposition, but white still has the opposition here. Black must move, but what is white going to do right now? Right now, white doesn't have any good moves. I mean, pushing the pawn will obviously be a draw, but white will never be able to get in front of the pawn. And if white goes, for example, backwards or sideways, then black occupies the square in front of the pawn, blockading the pawn, and that's also a very obvious draw. And if white goes to anywhere else, then black can easily capture the pawn on later moves, or even if black doesn't capture the pawn. It's just once black occupies this blockade position, it's a drawn game. So as you can see from this, even if black does not have the opposition, this will be a drawn game. Now, I want to show you another way in which black can actually exploit this mistake that white has made by moving to c3. Let's say black moves to b8. Okay, once again, black does not have the opposition right now. There's 4 even squares between black and white, and black does not have the opposition. But once again, black has a drawn game. Doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, black does not need to move any closer toward the pawn. Black can simply remain on the back rank until white moves into the 5th rank. Once white moves into the 5th rank, black must make sure that it is able to occupy a square directly in front of white, thereby gaining the opposition and preventing white from moving into the 6th rank, and it'll be a drawn game. Let's just see what would happen here. White is trying to get closer and occupy a critical square. Black doesn't even worry about it. Black remains on the back rank because, like I said, black knows that as soon as white moves into the 5th rank, black moves into the opposition square of, in our case, e7, directly opposing white on the same file. And so this is a drawn game, because no matter what white does, black will always maintain the opposition and prevent white from moving into the 6th rank. which is the critical square for a pawn on the 4th rank. So there's nothing white can do. White cannot gain ground. Black opposes white on every file after file. So this is a drawn game. So I hope this video helped. Once again, there's several interesting things that we've illustrated in this video. One of them, of course, is the extended overpass. Okay, the goal of white to pass over the pawn to get to the outside critical square. And the other thing we've learned is that black does not need opposition in order to prevent white from occupying a critical square. Okay, this is important because sometimes the superior side might think, oh, I got the opposition, and therefore I'm good. No, you're not good. You're not good. Opposition is not going to help you if you cannot occupy a critical square. Okay, if you cannot occupy a critical square, you're not going to win. Opposition works for black, and it's one tool in black's repertoire of beating white and preventing a win on white's part. The other tool is simply preventing white from getting to a critical square. Okay, so that's the thing that you need to remember here. I hope this video helps.